Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. Let's take a minute to take the blessings of Shri Krishna and proceed with this particular. Thank you. We've had two very, very interesting sessions till now, the first session and the second session. And we are now moving into the third session, which is about how can you actually take accountability for your future, taking accountability of my future. And if you look at the entire discourse in the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna actually is painting a future for Arjuna that he wants him to take up willingly and participate in. And that is the whole message of the entire Gita. And on this very auspicious day, I'd like to welcome all of you to this particular session. And in the next in the next 1 hour or so, we'll try and interact and try and get some answers to these issues. So the whole idea of today's topic is how do you move up the accountability ladder through the 3 steps of the thought process, which is Satva, Rajas, and Tamas. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna is talking to Uddhava, he says that in the beginning, the gunas were perfectly balanced. And because of the vicissitudes of time, Kala, there is a certain amount of imbalance that happens in the gunas, and that is how creation actually starts. So the gunas precede all creation. So this is something that we'll have to keep in mind, that when we are talking about the 3 gunas, these are gunas that existed well before what we now know in terms of time. So we'll have to keep this thought always in mind. And I'm very happy that Mr. Balakrishnan said that he started reading chapter 7 today. Sir, when you get down to chapter 60, verse 16 in chapter 7, you will read there that Shri Krishna advises Arjuna that there are 4 kinds of people who worship him, who perform good actions, who are all devoted to him and who perform the kind of actions that they do. He says one who is in distress, who obviously prays to the Lord and says, "Oh Lord, please help me. I'm in some kind of trouble. I need some kind of deliverance, whatever be that trouble that he is in, whether it is health, whether it is money, or whether it is peace of mind, or whatever it is." And he's saying, "God, please help me in this particular way." And the other one who seeks knowledge, who says, "Look, I need some amount of knowledge, oh Lord, please help me there." Another one can be someone who's seeking wealth. And he says, I need money, I need to create wealth, I need to take care of my family, I need to take care of people who are there with me, people who are dependent on me. So can you help me on that? And finally, he says, somebody who's actually wise and who's seeking more wisdom. And of course, he goes on to say in verse 17, that the person who's wise is someone who's absolutely dear to me. So let me begin this session, Mr. Balakrishnan, by saying that, after 40 years, of reading the Bhagavad Gita, the fact that you are here, and there are so many people today in this chat room that I can see, some of whom have been associated with my father for many, many years. I can see my one of the people who I respect a lot, Mr. VSS Murthy is in the room, Mr. Ravindra Shah is there. To all of you, a very humble namaskara, and with your blessings, we'll begin this particular session. In the same chapter, he goes on to say that when a devotee desires to offer with faith to whatever form he chooses, to him I grant immovable faith. So Krishna is very clearly telling Arjuna this lesson that, look, if you have faith, and with that particular faith, whatever path you choose, it doesn't really matter which of these 4 paths that you're choosing, whether you are in distress, whether you want knowledge, whether you want wealth, or whether you want wisdom and more wisdom, it doesn't really matter. But you need to have immovable faith in wanting that particular aspect in your life. And if you were to have that faith, then you must remember that that faith is what gets you more faith. And once you get more faith, and then, you have to continue to believe in this power. You have to have the faith that you can do anything that you want. Yesterday, we talked a lot about the power of I can. And the fact that if you become an I can person in life, that there is quite simply nothing that you can't achieve in life. And this is the message of Krishna very clearly. That if you want something, but you must want it with faith. You must not do things just for doing sake. As Swami Chinmayananda has, said in that lovely speech of his in 1980, sir, that don't do things and then don't seek from God something and then do exactly the opposite 5 minutes later. So when you go to a temple and, you close your eyes and you ask for something from him, which is fine, do it with all faith, but don't come out of the temple and do exactly the opposite. His favorite example is that when a businessman opens his shop, he takes an incense stick and he prays to God saying, "Oh God, give me good business today." And then 2 minutes later sits at his table and he's only plotting of how to cut my competition's throat or how to cut my, suppliers' throats and things like that. Don't do that. But if you have great faith, then there is quite simply nothing on earth that you can't achieve. So when we are talking about this whole business of the accountability ladder, and when we are talking about the interplay of the three gunas, this is something that we need to keep in mind. That if we have that intense faith in what we want, then there is quite simply nothing that we cannot achieve in our life. One of the earliest mentions in the Gita on the gunas and the kind of properties of nature is in chapter 13, when he actually talks about the fact that, look, there are these three gunas, and it is these three gunas that drive the underlying attitudes of man and then the behavior. And from then on, the first 12 chapters of the Gita are interesting. The next 6 chapters, right up to the end from chapter 13 to chapter 18, are a completely different kind of an exposition of what Shri Krishna is talking to Arjuna. So today we'll dwell a lot into chapter 14. So I'm going to be jumping up and down from one chapter to the other because I want to get this thought into a particular coherent whole. Chapter 14 is really when he talks a lot about how can you go beyond the three forces of nature. How can you actually master, how can you develop a mastery of your guna, and how can you develop a process or a system by which you can go beyond that. So in various interpretations of the guna, one of the simplest interpretations of gunas, a guna is like a strand. Okay, so you have many strands that can get together and form some kind of a rope. So if you can envisage a nice little rope, it has got multiple. If you take a coir rope, it has got multiple strands that go into forming one thick strand, and those thick strands then get together and form another strand. And it is that rope that actually binds a wearer. It can bind somebody into a particular place. It can bind somebody into a particular action. Likewise, if you look at these various strands or these gunas, these are gunas that actually bind us into the whole circle of birth, of life, of death, of realization. So it is these gunas that can actually have a fantastic interplay. And if you recognize that all these gunas are actually there in a particular human being, there is this, one of the interpretations is that either you could be a sattvic person or a rajasic person or a tamasic person. But I believe that, deep in the Gita, it is very clearly written that all three gunas are available in one human being at any given point of time. So it is not that these are mutually exclusive, that you're only a sattvic type of a person or a rajasic type of a person or a tamasic type of a person, but you're actually, all three of them are available within you at any given point of time. In the same chapter 14, in verse 9, he talks about the three different kinds of strands of nature. And look at the beauty of what he talks about. He says Satva is primarily related to purity, is calmness, is light. Okay? Sattva is primarily about being in harmony with the circumstances that you are in right now. And that is what Sattva is all about. Just to go back, when he talks about the three strands of nature, he's saying Sattva. Sattva is about purity, is about calmness, is about light. And sattva is primarily how can you be in harmony with the circumstances around you. Anybody who is bringing this particular nature of his mind, of his heart, is someone who is more in harmony with the circumstances around him. Whereas rajas is more about passion, is more about action. There's a lot of restless energy. There is an energy that makes you move around from place to place. That is what is rajas. That's the strand of rajas. And tamas is the strand of complete ignorance. It is about darkness. It is about inertia. It makes you lethargic. It makes you unmotivated. That is what tamas does to you. So in each of us, all three of these strands, the sattva, the rajas, and the tamas, are present. Because these are the three strands that come to the fore, and that is what makes a beautiful rope that binds you in life, in birth, in death, and in realization. Now, this is something that we need to keep in mind, that it is up to us to figure out what is the color of the rope that we want. So if you can just think of these three strands, of sattva as an orange strand, of rajas as a green strand, and then the tamas as a black strand, or whatever. And if you can figure out what kind of a rope that you want to create, okay, that is up to us. You see, it's like a bird. A bird builds a beautiful nest out of whatever it gets. It goes and spies something, and it picks it up. It comes and it integrates it into the nest. Now, if you look at the nest as a creation of nature, the nest is one of the finest architectures that has been created in nature. Because in the nest, the bird lays its eggs and manages to hatch its little ones. And whether there is rain, whether there is hail, whether there's a storm, whether there is wind, that nest provides the protection for the little bird. And therefore, it is the bird that goes and picks up whatever scrap that is available that it spies on and comes and integrates it into the nest. Likewise, we human beings have this opportunity of going out and figuring out what is the kind of rope that we want to create in our life. Do we want more of sattva? Do we want more of rajas? Or do we want more of tamas? That is a choice that we have. We can decide what kind of a rope that we want to use to bind ourselves to this whole cycle that we've got of birth, of life, of death, and of realization. So, just to move forward, okay, if you look at character, in the first day we talked about how conditioning leads, to thought, and thought leads to action. If we can go back now, character is actually formed from the conditioning that you have in life. Whatever is your conditioning, that is the conditioning that goes to create your character. And your character actually expresses itself in terms of thoughts. And those thoughts then go into forming action. And those actions then get you the kind of results that you want. So we did talk in the first session how positive thoughts will lead to positive action. And therefore, positive action leads to positive results. The converse, which is negative thoughts, will lead to negative action, which will lead to negative results. And therefore, it is in our, we have to figure out how we can develop those thought processes that will lead there. So we looked at two very important things in the first session. We looked at how we said, make your heart a slave of the mind. If you make your heart a slave of the mind, then there is no doubt about the fact that you are going to get those kinds of thoughts that are enabling thoughts and that will help you move up in the kind of results that you want. And the second one, yesterday we talked about being strength-led, saying if you can constantly keep focusing on the strengths that you have and become someone who will be led by your strengths in life, don't worry about the weakness that you have, but just keep looking at the strengths that you've got and try and figure out how you can get those strengths to help you get to what you want to get to in life. So we looked at both of these yesterday, and we will continue with this entire, inquiry at this point of time and try and figure out how we can actually go one step forward and figure out what is the kind of thought processes that we can adopt, which will actually take us forward in life and get us going in life. So, if you look at what is the objective of life, okay, the objective of life is to shape our character so that it can move upwards in life in pursuit of your higher purpose. We talked about how do you actually discover your higher purpose in life, and how do you make sure that you can consciously move from one state of mind to the other state of mind. That is the basic objective of any kind of life that all of us lead. So we need to figure out, how can you move from one state of mind to the second state of mind to the higher state of the mind, and therefore move in a way that is in consonance with the higher purpose that you have got in your life. That is something that we said that we need to look at. So imagine this, during a normal day, during a normal regular day, all three thought processes, the Satva, the Rajas and the Tamas, are what we are going to go through. All three. So let me just give you an example. All the three gunas will have an interplay during a regular day. And let me share with you how. You could start the day after a good night's sleep with a sense of calmness. If you're someone who goes out and does a walk or exercises or something like that, you could actually have a situation where your mind is entirely calm, and with a prayer that you can start early in the morning, you can start off your day in a very, very calm, peaceful process in the Sattva state of the mind. So that is what you can start the day with. As the day progresses, later in the day, you could get your energy levels can spike, and you could get caught up in the entire frenzy of activity, which is the Rajasic state of mind. Now, there is this beautiful, Western concept that has been pushed to all of us, which is called the concept of multitasking. Now, this multitasking is one of the most dangerous things that you can actually think of in life, because when you multitask, what you're actually doing is that you are doing a lot of stuff which is not going to help you in any which way. And the third thing is, by the evening, your energy levels can get so depleted, you can feel so drained at the end of the day that you can reach to a level of pointlessness or frustration, and you can get into a tamasic stage, which means that I've not really achieved very much in my life, and maybe I want to give it all up. And that is a state of mind that you can reach at the end of the day. So you can go through all these three states in a day. In a transaction that you're going through with someone at this point of time, and let us say you're dealing with a difficult client, you can start with a certain calmness, and when things are going against the flow, you can get very agitated about the whole thing, and you can get into a Rajasic kind of a state of mind, and you want to try and conclude this deal, you want to do something about it. That is something which can happen. And then finally at the end, if things are not working out, then you can actually get into a state of mind by which you say, it's pointless, let me give up this whole thing. And therefore, in a regular day, you can have a situation of going through all this. In a transaction that you're going through, you can have a situation where you're going to go through all these three states of mind: the Sattva, the Rajas, and the Tamasic. So what I'd like you to do is do a simple exercise like we've been doing over the last 2 days. Just do a simple exercise. Let's take a minute, okay? And try and discover which is the point of time at which our energy levels seem to be at the highest. Is it early in the morning? Is it somewhere in the midday? Is it sometime in the evening? Is it at the night? What time are our energy levels at a particular level? Why don't you actually go and try and do this exercise? And let's take a minute to sit down and think about it and find out in what way can we actually, what is the kind of energy levels that we've got and at what point of time. Just figure this out. Also do one more exercise. In a transaction, if things are going your way or things are not going your way, at what point of time will you recognize whether at this point of time in the transaction, my energy is actually more of a Sattva or a Rajasic or a Tamasic? Just do this exercise. So if you find this out, saying that, what is the kind of energy that you've got, and where is the interplay of your energy, you will start recognizing as to what is the state of mind that you are in at this point of time. Is it more sattvic? Is it more rajasic? Is it more tamasic at this point of time? So remember, how to recognize this is this. If your mind is calm, if your mind is very collected, then obviously it's the first state, which is the sattvic stage. If your mind is very restless and there's a lot of agitation happening, then obviously you're in a rajasic state of the mind. And if your mind is one of saying, this is completely pointless, let me not worry about this, let me get out of this whole thinking, let me finish this transaction as quickly as possible, then obviously your state of mind at that time is in a very tamasic stage. Keep this in mind. So Krishna continues to expand on the gunas and how they create each and every interplay that actually happens. So the entire 14th chapter, as we said earlier, is really about this interplay, about how the gunas come and how they affect you and how these gunas will actually lead your entire life. And somewhere at point of time, the whole of the 14th chapter is really that. And at some time, Arjuna asks him, I think in the 20th or the 21st verse, he asks him, how do you actually recognize an individual who's gone beyond all these gunas? Is there a possibility of some way in which we can recognize such a person? Is there some way that we can find out for ourselves? So you see, most of Arjuna's questions are actually very interesting questions. You can look at it as a question from Arjuna, but actually you can look at it as a question from you to the Lord. And you can actually turn, if you just substitute Arjuna with yourself and say, how can I recognize where I am in at this point of time? And that's what I talked about a little earlier, that if your mind is calm in the midst of that transaction and you're saying, okay, how do we proceed in this area? Then obviously you're in the first state of mind. If your mind is restless, it is agitated, it's kind of going here and there, then obviously it is rajasic. If your mind is in a give up kind of a state and saying, let me give up, this is not going to work for me, then obviously your state of mind at that time is tamasic. So Krishna replies very nicely to him in, I think, the 23rd or the 24th verse, in which he mentions very nice, he mentions a beautiful word at that time, okay, amongst a whole host of other lovely phraseologies. As I said in the first session, each phrase in the Gita itself is enough for a lifetime of learning. But some of the phrases that I really love in the Gita, and one of the phrases that he mentions as to how do you actually recognize such a person, and he says, Sama Dukkha Sukha. Look at the beauty of this phrase, that whether it is, unhappiness or joy, whether it is good or bad, whether it is honor or dishonor, here is a person who is completely practicing equanimity. Elsewhere in the Gita, he talks of another beautiful word, which is sthita prajna. That means I am aware of the circumstances that I am in, but at this point of time, I am not going to allow those circumstances to affect me. And this is what is the issue in today's modern world. 60 to 70% of our time, 60 to 70% of our time, and we did an audit recently, 60 to 70% of our time is wasted in doing unnecessary activities. If you take a look at anybody's life, they will tell you whether it is a WhatsApp conversation, whether it is a gossip, whether it is a cooler conversation, whatever be the kind of conversation that's happening, it's about talking ill of others, it's talking bad about someone, it is about the hopelessness of the future. A lot of our time is actually wasted when we get involved in discussing about stuff that is not going to help us. And therefore, look at this beautiful word that he used, Sama Dukkha Sukha. That means I am completely equal in pain and pleasure. I have absolutely no issue whether it is honor or dishonor. And he says whether it is gold or a clod of mud, everything but everything to me is absolutely the same. That is when you recognize a person who's absolutely in harmony with what is all around him. Now, if we take this whole thing forward, and I talked about the accountability ladder, so let me explain to you what what we use in our terms. If you look at the way you work, there is a certain mindset that comes in the way we actually work, the way we do things. One, you could just go through the motions of doing what you're doing in life. And you could be actually going through whatever is happening, and you start at 9 and suddenly at 6 o'clock you've gone through the whole day, nothing much has been achieved. The second part of it is that you could actually be taking some amount of responsibility for what you're doing. This is the basic level that any organization, any individual is supposed to be doing, that you take responsibility for whatever you're doing. The third level, the higher level, the third level is what we call the ownership level, where you take ownership of the activities that you're performing on. And the highest level is what we call the accountability level. Of how can you actually take accountability of what it is? So let me explain this through an example. Supposing, for instance, you have a sales guy, you have a salesperson, and here is a person who's supposed to sell some product or service on behalf of your company. And you discuss with him and say, we want to do so many sales. And he says, fine, what do you want me to do? And you say, well, you got to go and, you got to call 20 people, or you got to go and meet 20 people and, do the sales and come back. I wanted to go, I wanted to sell a product, I wanted to collect the money, and I wanted to come back. Now, if this guy is going through the first phase, where he's just going through the motions, at the end of the day, he'll come back and give you a long list of reasons why he couldn't complete one single sale. And he'll say, I went there, that guy was not there, he asked me to come back. He's just going through the motions of whatever he's doing. On the second, a little higher than that, here is someone who's taking some amount of responsibility. So what does this guy do? He is caught up in a lot of activity. Okay? He is doing a lot of activity. The first guy, obviously, who's going through the motions is, as we know, a very tamasic kind of approach to life. In Rajasic also, there is what I call a lower Rajasic and a higher Rajasic kind of a state of mind. So in the lower Rajasic, here is a guy who's going through the frenzy of activities. There's a lot of stuff that he's going. He's very busy. He is never available. He's always saying he's on the move, but no results are coming in. A higher Rajasic kind of a person is taking ownership. And here is someone who's keeping an eye on the results that he wants, and he is prepared to go out, he is prepared to work very hard, but he is always looking at the future and saying, what kind of a results that we get? He is trying to second guess. So when you're in a Rajasic state of a mind, you're trying to second guess as a sales guy, what can be the sales that I'm going to get from this kind of a customer? Is it worth going there? Is it not worth going there? Whereas if you look at the highest, which is the accountability level, that is the time when you're focused on the outcome. And you're saying, my job as a sales guy is to go and sell and to collect the check. That is the outcome that I have been asked to do. Now, it doesn't matter whether I do 1 or I do 5, but I need to go and collect those 5 checks and come back. That is the job. That is the task that I have been given. My task is not to go into the market and do what I'm supposed to be doing. My task is not. So look at the kind of 3-4 levels. Going through the motions, being in a frenzy, keeping an eye, lot of activity, but little result, and finally taking accountability. If we were to merge our states of mind with this, you will discover that the first state of mind of just going through the motions is a very tamasic way of looking at life. If you look at the lower Rajasic, which is how can you take responsibility of what you're doing, of going and trying to drive some results, that's the lower Rajasic state of mind. The higher Rajasic state of mind is when you take some amount of ownership, where you're saying, okay, I need to produce these results, and I'm going to start second guessing, I'm going to start doing whatever I want. But a Sattvic state is when you take accountability. That is the state of mind when you're focused on the outcomes. And this is the mindset change that we need to go through, especially in the new normal. The old situation of just going through the motions, of taking responsibility, taking ownership is not going to help anymore. We now need to take accountability for what we're going to do, because it is the outcomes that is going to determine what life is all about. Whether it is business, whether it is personal, whether it is family, whether it is health, whether it is studies, whatever it is, we need to move into that Sattvic state of mind, which is accountability. So Keep this in mind. At a responsibility level, you're only doing. At an ownership level, there is some amount of think and do. And there is this great, equation that we are made of. And at the accountability level, you feel for what you need to do, you think about it, and then you go ahead and do it. You feel for it, you think about it, and then you actually go and do it. So where does the feeling come from? The feeling comes from your heart. It comes right from the heart saying that, look, this is what I want to do. This is what is important to me in my life. I would want to do this because this is something that is important to me, to my life, to my family, to my staff, to my employees, to my customers, to my clients, whatever it is that you're doing. You need to start feeling for it. It needs to come from your heart. And then you need to start thinking about what needs to be done. And then you start going out and doing it. Okay? Now, this whole theory of management is first put the feeling that, look, this is something which is important. Take accountability. So when you move into a sattvic state of mind and you start taking accountability, that is when that you will start getting some amazing results. So why do you need to do this? Why do you need to take up a sattvic state of mind? Why do you need to take accountability of whatever you're doing in life? Krishna gives us a very, very interesting answer to this. And he talks about it in chapter 3, saying, in whatever way the best of men behave, they establish an example which will be respected and emulated by other men. In whatever way you behave, everybody else will. So if in your organization, if in your family, you were to adopt this method of a sattvic kind of a thinking, which is accountability oriented, which is being calm, which is being collected, then the rest of your whole environment around you will do it. Yesterday, we talked about the whole concept of being an inverted paranoid, of someone who radiates a feeling of I can across the whole system. Now, here is how you can actually do that again, that you can become a lighthouse. You can empower others. Now, while you're being a lighthouse, while you take accountability, while you take, you are focused on the outcome, you live in the now. That is the whole point of being sattvic. You see, Tamasic people live in the past. They keep thinking, what's the point? Rajasic person live too much in the future, and because they're focused on results. Whereas a sattvic person is someone who lives in the now, who's calm, who's, collected. And he's saying, I will live in the now and I will worry about this particular outcome at this point of time. I am not going to be looking at what may happen later. And therefore, if you start being that, then everybody around you will start being that. Everybody around you will get empowered to start believing that that is the way that you can actually do stuff. So this is what I'd like to recommend to all of you, okay? That if you were to look at that, if you were to look at this, so your future is your creation. Whatever it is that whatever is your higher purpose in life, it will manifest. It will happen. And this is again the lesson that he gives us in verse 26 in chapter 14, that you can actually get whatever you want in your life, provided you work for that. So keep this in mind, ladies and gentlemen. In your life, whether it is your personal life, whether it is your home, whether it is family, whether it is career, whether it is business, whatever it is, take accountability and become a lighthouse. Because when you become a lighthouse, you will create the power to illuminate everybody around you to go and do what you want to do. I don't know whether a friend of mine, VVS Ravi Vadamani is here. Today he promised me that he'll be here, or I don't know if Dr. Pandurang Setti is here from the RV group of institutions. But both of these people have been lighthouse in their own way. They have given permission to others to do what they believe is the right thing to do. They have always done the right thing. And thanks to that, these two people have empowered people to be to be in that kind of a mindset. So will a sattvic mindset help you? 100%. You will move up the accountability ladder because you will be focused on outcomes. And when you focus on the outcome of the transaction, when you focus on the outcome of the day, when you focus on the outcome of the interaction, what you're going to be doing is that you're going to be living in the now. There is no stress whatsoever, or what may happen, what may not happen. Some transactions will go your way, some transactions will not go your way. That is life. Remember, yesterday we talked about it, that the failure is not about falling. Failure is about falling and choosing to remain there. That is the whole definition of failure. So likewise, when you're doing some activity, if you were to take accountability for the future and make accountability part of your thinking and make a sattvic kind of a thinking of being calm or being a samadukha sukha person, then you will be able to focus, be in the now, right now. So accountability, ladies and gentlemen, is about living in the now. It is being focused on the outcome of at this point of time. So it's like somebody who's cooking a great dish. When you're cooking a great dish, yes, the dish will be appreciated, may not be appreciated, it may come out good, it may not come out good. But at that point of time, if the entire focus is not in adding the right ingredients, is not in making sure that you cook on a slow fire and stuff like that, then that dish is going to get ruined. You can't think about what the reaction later will be while you're focusing at this point of time on that. It's like when you do a prayer. When you do a prayer, be in the now. That's why I keep telling people, when you go to a temple, at that point of time, don't buy a ticket and tell the pujari, do one archana and come back, and he disappears inside the temple and does one archana and comes back, and you are on your mobile phone discussing what is happening on the stock market. That is not prayer. That is not living in the now. That is not taking accountability for your future. So put your heart into what you're doing, work in the now, work at this point of time, okay? And make sure that if you were to focus and be in the now, don't get into a situation where you're so overawed by the results that may come. The results may be good, the results may be bad. There is a difference between results and being outcome focused. Remember that. Don't be anxious about what will happen. At this point of time, this is what I need to do. Let me be focused on this point of time and let me take accountability of the future. And then finally, Krishna tells Arjuna that if you want to find true realization, Arjuna, follow any of the three paths, the Bhakti Yoga, the Karma Yoga, or the Jnana Yoga. Any of these three paths will lead you to your future. So ladies and gentlemen, you are the future. Take accountability and make sure that you can get what you want to get in life. Move up the accountability ladder. Get your people to move up the accountability ladder. Live in the now. Be focused at this point of time on what you need to do, and you will get a lot of stuff.